adventure, intrigue, lost cities, ancient mysteries, and more on this week's episode of East10 Investigates. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the East10 Outpost. I'm Cody, and I'm going to be your guide today into a journey of a lifetime that I recently got to embark on. See, I went down to Florida. I got to meet with the amazing Matt Bell, and while I was there, he showed me his collection of precision ancient Hardstone vases. See, these little things have raptured my imagination for years, ever since Ben first put them out into the public zeitgeist and pointed out what a truly miraculous anomaly these little things are. But what I used to think about them, and what I think about them now after getting to see them in person and touch them, well, it's changed. So that's exactly what we're going to be taking a look at today as East10 Investigates Precision Ancient Hardstone Vases. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to give a little bit of context to these amazing little vases. But if you're anything like me and you already know the story like the back of your hand, don't worry, I will keep it somewhat brief. But for everybody else, let's get to know these a little bit better. These precision Hardstone vases have been found all over the world, but a vast majority of them have come from Egypt. The assumption being that is their origin point, and they were dispersed in smaller amounts from there to other local regions, either through trade or conquest. It's estimated that between 40 to 60,000 of them were pulled from the step pyramid of Djoser alone, and many Old Kingdom burial sites have been found containing them as well. Because of literally thousands of years of looting from ancient Egypt, many of these vases wound up on the antiquities market. For years, collectors have coveted these gorgeous works of art, but it wasn't until Ben Van Kerkwijk pointed out their anomalous precision that people really started to realize their true value. Fortunately for the world, one of the people who noticed was Matt Bell, CEO of the Bealls Corporation and host of the podcast Limitless. Matt has been an absolute blessing to the world and the ancient history community alike, and has transparently shared his collection and the data he's received from scanning it with state-of-the-art precision measuring equipment with the world. The results have been astonishing, with many vases showing precision down to 1/1000th of a millimeter, fractions upon fractions of a human hair of deviance away from perfection. Results that we would have only been able to achieve ourselves from about the 1970s on, with many of these vases boasting provenance that dates them back to being recovered well before the 1970s, and on the antiquities market since then, meaning it's impossible for a lot of these to be forgeries. Okay, so at the start of the video I mentioned that my thoughts on these had changed. Let's get into what I meant by that. See, I used to think that these served some sort of acoustic function. Given that so many of them have the ability to freely spin, I couldn't help but think about what would happen if air was blown into it. It would create the spinning effect. It would also create a bit of an acoustic whistle. Think about if you've ever blown into the top of a beer bottle, that sound that's created is somewhat pleasing, and if you actually know how to do it right, you can make very pretty music with it. And given how acoustically and musically inclined the ancient Egyptians were, it doesn't seem far-fetched to me that they would have made an instrument out of beautiful vases, because of course they valued beauty in music and visuals equally. It wasn't one more than the other. So it's completely reasonable to me that that's a function they could have served. But when I actually got to see them, and I actually got to see Matt's collection, there was one in particular that it completely changed my mind. This one right here. See, recently Luke Caverns was on Matt Bell for the second time, and he discussed his theory on what he thought these vases might have been used for. And basically, it was old world pill containers. See, he reasoned this might have been what the priest class carried around their psychedelics in, things like the Blue Lotus. And when you see ones like this that are actually pointed on the end, this has no ability to stand. There's nothing you could possibly do to get it to stand unless you put it upside down, or if you carried it on a necklace around your neck. And what's interesting is this is cored out on the inside. It's not just a straight core down, it's evenly cored out in the shape that you see represented on the outside. I would imagine it's honestly pretty thin, and as you can see in the scan of it, there's actually a bust, a little bit of a crack, and the wall itself isn't very thick. So with all of that in mind, it leads me to believe that the only thing this could have really been useful for is a liquid or a powder. If you were carrying it around your neck, you would be able to retrieve a liquid or a powder from this pretty easily. Get yourself in a priestly mindset and go about your old world sermon. So honestly, I think Luke was right. I think that's exactly what these vases were. They were a symbol of perfection, of divine perfection. A symbol that, like we see represented in the Great Pyramids and other incredibly anomalous builds and creations of the old world, they did it for the divine. The divine was perfection. So to have a vessel that was symbolically divine and contained the essence that allowed you to connect with your deity, well, it makes perfect sense to me. And in my mind, that's a case closed. Now, I want to be perfectly clear about this. I don't ever like to put all my eggs in one basket or precision Hardstone vase, but I think there's pretty good supporting evidence. And hear me out on this. If we think like the ancient Egyptians thought, and that's symbolically, I think it makes a lot of sense. See, up until recently, we wouldn't even have been able to make these ourselves. So if we would have even had the equipment in the early 1900s to scan these and realize exactly the precision these were boasting, well, we would have been jealous and we would have coveted these just as much as apparently everyone else in the old world did. See, these were, for the people who knew, an immediate symbol of wealth and power and importance. The average person wasn't going to get their hands on one of these because they weren't meant for average things. Their design isn't average. Their precision is not average. They really were, seemingly up until recently, crafted by the gods. And that's pretty astounding. So when you think about symbolically how these would have been immediately apparent to the ruling class and to the lower class of who these belonged to, well, it makes a lot of sense that their contents would have been something also symbolically important. And that would have been their cell phone with God, They're a great communicator to the deities of the old world. See, the lower class didn't have access to that. So, when you think about these vases that literally couldn't be set down, well, I highly doubt those psychedelics and those potent drugs were ever really just set down and laying around. I doubt it very strongly. So, for them to have been carrying around little vases like this, or in ceremonies, setting down ones like this, and maybe even mixing the incense through spinning ones, who knows? But it makes a lot of sense that something this important and this coveted and symbolically this divine would have been used for one and only thing: divine communication. So, I'm not going to say I'm 100% in on it, but I'm a solid 90. And now we're going to talk about authenticity, because I see this one brought up so much, it's worth addressing head on. So, like I mentioned earlier, Matt has packed plenty of receipts into this debate, and he's released the provenance for many of the vases that he's released the scan data for. And a lot of these vases have provenance that puts them on the antiquities market in a time when we wouldn't even been able to make these vases ourselves. So the modern day forgery argument, just off that alone, requires some serious mental gymnastics to try and rationalize, considering we didn't even have equipment to make or measure the precision that these vases boast in, the 1960s, the 1950s. When they have provenance that places them back at that point, we would have been jealous and in awe of how they were made too. We wouldn't have a clue. But when you actually get to see them, and you get to hold them, and you get to shine a light inside them, that really changes the whole perspective. See, all these armchair academics that say, oh, the provenance, they don't have that. They haven't held these. They haven't looked inside them. They haven't seen the machining marks that they have that are corroded by literally thousands of years of dirt and dust and debris, and if the theory's correct, drugs. But you can see the age and the weather. That can't be faked. That can't be done. It's there, it's tangible, and it's present inside every one of those vases. And when you actually get to see them in person, you get to look at them, that's immediately apparent. So not only is there provenance to show for it, when you look inside it, there's no doubting that the age is there. But the next thing I see get attacked is Matt's character. People will say he's running some sort of con or a grift, or he has no business in the ancient history community. And honestly, I find that more egregious than the lack of provenance claim. Because I got to see Matt's operation. I got to see how his business operates and exactly the kind of facility they work in. I got to see his boardroom. I got to see his podcast studio. And let me tell you, this man doesn't need to grift or con anybody. He's already got it all. And then some. I'm a high-level manager in a Fortune 500 company that does very well for itself. It's got great and impressive operations itself. But let me tell you, getting to see Matt's and exactly how he operates his company, I was in absolute awe. It's truly incredible. And anybody out there suggesting that there is any sort of character issue with Matt, or any sort of con or grift, They haven't spent 1 second looking into his career, his rap sheet, his acumen, nothing. They haven't seen him interacting online and giving his time graciously and freely, spending incredible amounts of money on these vases to release them for the public to gain awareness, understanding, and education. He's been incredibly kind and giving well more than that to me personally, and I see him doing that with all sorts of people. He's a very genuine and good guy, and somebody a lot of us really look up to as a role model. So any insinuation that Matt's character or the provenance of the vases doesn't hold water, it's not a serious argument. And anybody making that claim or those arguments, they're not serious people. And they're not trying to have a serious conversation about these vases, because anybody who spends 1 second looking into either one of those claims will realize they're not worth a modern day replica vase. So to wrap this thing up, here's what I'm going to recommend. If you have any ability to see one of these in person, I strongly suggest you do so. Cosmic Summit 2025 is just around the corner now, and I know Matt's going to have his entire collection there for the public to view, which has to be a logistics shipping nightmare that I can't even imagine how stressful that would be. But if you have the ability to capitalize on his stressors and see the collection, I would encourage you to do so, because there's no museum in the world that has anything close to the amount that he has available to be viewed. But if you can't make it out to Cosmic Summit, check and see if any of your local museums happen to have one of these on exhibit for the public to see. Because even just one of them, well, when you get to look at it up close, it reveals just how astonishing it is in ways that seeing it on the computer or reading about it just really can't describe. And like I talked about its symbolic importance, I really feel like it's symbolically important in our modern day and age for knowledge and secrets we've yet to unlock. Because I think when we figure out how these were made and when these were made, we'll figure out more secrets and more answers we've been wondering. Things like how the Great Pyramid was constructed. And no, I don't want to hear the academically accepted answer in case you were about to put that in the comments. So these little guys, they've got a lot to tell us if we're willing to listen. So hopefully you'll keep an open mind and you're willing to listen to the secrets they have to tell us. But I would love to know, what do you think? What do you think their purpose was? Do you think the theory of them holding drugs was correct? And how do you think they were constructed? And when do you think they were constructed? Because really there's so many more questions than answers, but that's the fun of it all. That's the indomitable quest for knowledge that we all have to undertake. It's constant. It's unending. We have to keep asking these questions if we want to keep getting answers. And hopefully we do want to keep getting answers, because the pursuit of knowledge, well, that's the whole point of it all, right? That's why we're here, to learn every day, to get a little bit better, hopefully, and to move forward. Just that much more, even if that's it. So hopefully you'll keep that in mind and be unending in your quest for knowledge. But until next time, if you enjoyed this today, like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff, and stay tuned, because there's going to be many more adventures just like this. But until the next one, stay curious, my friends.